CIO News. I am Khushbu, Soni, your host for the broadcast and Chief Editor at CIO News. This is an exclusive Tech Talk series powered by Trellix. It is a recorded session and will be available on our website, that is cionews.co.in, and our CIO News LinkedIn handle. I'm very excited to invite our guest for today. We have Mr. Prasad Pujari, the Chief Information Security Officer from Tata Technologies. Prasad has rich experience working with various tech brands. Prasad is a BE graduate from Pune University and has 2+ years of decade experience in IT infrastructure services management, cybersecurity domain. He has worked with global organizations like Infoceps, Tata Technologies, Persistent Systems, Mantrax, and Cybit Software Private Limited. In his current role, Prasad is accountable for building and enhancing the cybersecurity posture for the global organization, as well as building information security work culture in the organization. Prasad, it's an absolute pleasure to have you today on the CIO News episode, and we're really looking forward to get great insights from our discussion today.
Thank you so much, Khushbu, for having me on this session.
Great. I'm also accompanied by Arvind Sharma, the Enterprise Technology Specialist, APAC from Trellix. Arvind has 20+ years of experience working with various brands. Arvind specializes in information security consulting, information security pre-sales, managed security services, and systems integration. Arvind, pleasure to have you today.
Thanks, Khushbu, for inviting me today, and looking forward to the discussion.
Awesome. So, on the topic of a need of an end-to-end IT infrastructure security, my first question is, sir, for you, Mr. Prasad. What are your views on developing a unified defense to protect every endpoint from device to cloud?
Yeah, it's a very hot topic, Khushbu, nowadays, since we are still into a pandemic situation, right? I think before we get on to it, let's first understand the unified defense, right, through an analogy. So, if we look at our earlier or traditional network defense architecture, we used to have a router, and then we have IPS, and we have IDS, and we have proxy, traditional firewall, wherein there was no application layer protection, right? But if you now look at with introduction of an next-gen firewall, we have actually clubbed all these different layers of security, right? And that gives us a final product called as next generation firewall, and it includes everything now, right, including the layer 7 protection at an application level. That has made our security practitioners' life so easy, right, if I really compare it. And that's what I would really call it as a unified defense in terms of network analogy. If I have to apply the similar analogy into endpoint security, right, now in recent past, the definition and boundaries of endpoint security has changed drastically, right? In fact, there are no boundaries now. We have become actually a distributed borderless enterprise. There is no limit to it, right? And the number of devices those who are connecting to my enterprise to consume the applications has increased exponentially, okay? During pandemic, in fact, we have to provision multiple devices to the employees with various form factors and operating systems, right? Importantly, again, the ownership of those devices, right? I'm referring to the BYOD policy here, right? So in all, this entire scenario has become very dynamic, right? So on one hand, the number of endpoints are increasing. At the same time, if you look at the number of agents and controls that we need to implement on these endpoints are also increasing. So we have one agent for endpoint management, another for endpoint protection. We have another agent for identity management, web filtering, disk encryption, and so on, right? So the number of agent controls are increasing day by day. Okay, and obviously the administration and compliance management of these devices is becoming very, very complex, right? That also needs specialized SMEs who will manage those console for each of these technology. So combining them together to get a meaningful insight, it is very, very important for us for CISOs like me, that we have to have a unified defense solution, right? That's the only way by which we can still continue to manage this show with the volume of information that we're getting and the scale with which it is increasing. Okay, so I think that's very, very important technology, at least with currently known types of endpoints. Unified is something that is going to help us a lot.
Right, absolutely. And my next question is, Arvind, for you. As a leader, Trellix being as a leader in the security space, what is your advice to CISOs and CIOs for evaluating their security infrastructure in the new normal?
Thanks for that question, Khushbu. And my thoughts are similar to Mr. Prasad as well, that the definition of the security infrastructure has changed in the last 2 years, because of the pandemic. The definition of and the expectation requirement from the management when they're looking at security infrastructure has changed drastically, right? So I would divide my answer into certain focus areas from the infrastructure point of view. The first being the workplace, right? That's where the endpoint comes into picture. That's where you get visibility across your hybrid or remote working environment. So you get visibility of the assets over there, and how secure they are, what's their security posture, and so on. So getting that visibility, and secondly, pushing security further left, right? That's the expectation almost for all the CISOs, as to be ahead of the threats, the campaigns, the targeted campaigns that are happening every day. Getting that visibility and making sure that your workplace is secure, right? Because earlier on, when we were looking at those campaigns, we were just looking at our office, our geolocation, where our offices are, and see how the campaigns are targeting that. But now, because of the remote work, that definition has changed, right? So now those endpoints can get attacked from any place, and we need to make sure that we have that visibility and we have the right protection against those kind of campaigns. So that's on the workplace side. The second is cloud. Cloud adoption has increased drastically in last 2 years, right? Again, I will divide in two parts. One is the in-house applications, right? You have to develop those applications, put that on the cloud, so that those applications are accessible via various IaaS or PaaS or SaaS platforms. Right. So DevSecOps is where you are looking for making sure that those applications are secure. And again, you're as left as possible, securing those applications before going live, right? And the second part is from the infrastructure part on the cloud, right? You're adopting IaaS and PaaS and SaaS platforms. Now, when you're adopting them, you're looking out for solutions like CNAM, cloud workload protection. You want to secure your Kubernetes environment in the cloud, and so on, right? So that's on the cloud side. The third would be data, right? So now that we've talked about workplace and cloud, the third is data, making sure, irrespective where the data is, whether that's in that remote workplace, or it's in a campus or in your SaaS application, making sure that data is still secure, right? So it's very, very important. And finally, as Mr. Prasad was talking about, having a unified view, and that's where the SecOps come in, right? Having a complete visibility of what's happening within your security infrastructure, making sure you're doing the detection and response across network, cloud, endpoint, and so on. And that's where the XDR comes in, right? So where you have the complete visibility of your security infrastructure, and you have the right tools so that you can respond as quickly as possible. And obviously, as Mr. Prasad said, and I'll close with that, is you need to have the right people, to run this operation, making sure that they're able to handle this incident response. So yes, you need the security infrastructure, but you also need the right recruitment from people perspective to make sure that operation is smooth.
Right. Absolutely. And Mr. Prasad, from a SOC perspective, Security Operations Center, we know it's a core function for an organization's cybersecurity charters, and its key focus is to quickly find and resolve threats to avoid damage to assets and data. And if the SOC is struggling, it is likely security outcomes, Ws and organizations are at risk. So SOC's challenges continue to grow in volume and scale despite increased spending. So as a CISO, how do you see a point security which is quickly evolving from traditional AV to EDR to the new buzz of XDR?
Yeah, right. See, as you rightly said, managing SOC in itself is becoming a challenge, right? In fact, in another interview with a large OEM about SOC and SIEM solutions, I think last month, I mentioned that my SOC team is now complaining that the video wall with 6 screens is not enough now, right? With the number of technology that we're introducing every quarter or every 6 months, and the volume and the scale of monitoring that we need to do altogether for them, running that SOC in itself is a becoming challenge, right? So definitely the need of XDR kind of solution is there because which will basically integrate multiple security solutions and automate the response as much as possible. With the traditional way we are managing SOC, if we continue so, we won't be able to manage that volume and scale very soon, right? So solutions like SOAR, which will automate most of the responses as well, and solution like XDR, which will basically combine the inputs from multiple sources and give you a meaningful result out of it, which is an actionable, absolute actionable, right? And to the extent possible, automate that action as well, is going to be a future, right? Again, with known volume of data and type of endpoints, at least for next few years, XDR kind of solution will definitely help CISOs to manage this show.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great. Now, when we come to discussing about threat management, secure IT organization, my question is for Arvind. Arvind, we've heard a lot about McAfee, enterprise, and FireEye businesses that have merged as Trellix. And as an industry veteran, how are you seeing this change, and how Trellix will be leading the cybersecurity industry and helping organizations across industry meet their IT security needs?
Thanks for that question, Khushbu. So last year, the Symphony Technology Group, STG, they acquired 2 organizations, which was McAfee Enterprise and FireEye. And January this year is where we've created a focused organization on XDR, which is Trellix, right? So XDR is focused on, so that's our key focus from a Trellix perspective. And just want to share our key principles as Trellix. Our first principle as an organization, which is focused on XDR, is to make sure our XDR solution is native and open. So we've talked about the focus area earlier, where we're talking about the workstations, cloud, data, SecOps, right? All of them, there will be different customers who have already done some investments in those areas. Now, so the XDR solutions need to be open so that it can integrate with the existing investments. Also, it should have native capabilities so that you won't need a lot of integration efforts to make that XDR ecosystem work. So that's the first focus, which is being native as well as open. The second is, having an XDR which is learning and adapting. So based on the sensors that we talk about endpoint, the network-based sensors, web gateways, firewalls, and all that. So all of them become sensors, and they're giving us information, the telemetry of what attacks they are looking at, right? So how do we learn and adapt our security posture based on that information that we're getting from those sensors? Very, very critical. So that's another focus area for us, making sure our XDR is learning and adapting. And finally, so once we've got this information from various data sources at the customer side, which might be, Trellix sensors, because we are also there in the endpoint, we're also there in the network side and so on, or it might be third party, right? So once we've done that integration, it is very important to share our expertise of what we look at, when we look at the telemetry data. So what is important so that our customers can quickly triage those threats and then take their actions accordingly. So we want to share our expertise. We want to embed our expertise within that XDR solution so that triaging those attacks is much, much easier. So we are very focused, XDR focused organization, under the banner of Trellix.
Awesome. Prasad, what are your views on Tata Technologies' current IT security posture? And as a CISO, what are your plans to continue to defend against ever-emerging threats?
Yeah. See, the ultimate objective is to protect the business, right? For a CISO, it is very important. And to achieve that objective, foremost is we have to understand the nature of business, right? That we are working the organization. And once we know that, we have to figure out what are the current trends of cybersecurity for that specific domain. Okay? So as a CISO, we are trying our best to balance between various layers of security, be it perimeter security, be it LAN segment, be it endpoint security, right? And as we are discussing, some time back, we are somewhere in between the work from home and returning to office situation, right? And definitely, pandemic has changed the focus of CISOs in terms of security. Now, if the current situation of work from home continues, the CISO function will also continue to focus more on endpoint security, cloud security, and SOC effectiveness. I think these are three key pillars at this moment, right? For last 2 years, I would say, and it will still continue if the situation continues to do so, right? And API integration is another thing that we are focusing, because during pandemic, we had to adopt a lot of cloud native applications so that we can deliver services seamlessly to the employees. So API integration and their security is going to be another important parameter. Lastly, what I would like to mention here is, in spite of having everything in place, we are constantly exposed to various risks, right? So developing resiliency in IT application and IT services and having appropriate cyber risk insurance are another two areas which are equally important in current situation, and we'll continue to work on those areas. I think that's what I would like to suggest my CISO peers.
Awesome. Great. My last question is, Arvind, for you. Trellix is leading the XDR solution provider space. Could you please throw some light on how Trellix would help organizations take control of any incident from detection to response and simplify the cybersecurity operations, to prioritize alerts and focus on true threats?
Sure, Khushbu. So Trellix, as I said, we create XDR architecture that is tailored for an organization's need, right? So depending on what sensors we are integrating, the use cases that would be expected might be data related, so data protection related use cases, or workstation related use cases, or cloud related, right? So on. So it will be dependent on what sensors we are integrating within their XDR architecture to get that visibility. But from overall, SOC functionalities, and how can we help our customers run their security operation much in improved or a better way, we look at three basic parts of our security operation. First is detection, identifying more and meaningful threats by combining telemetry from multiple sensors. That's our core area, so that our customers can detect in real time across their infrastructure, and this reduces the mean time to detection, right? So that's the first outcome that we're looking for. The second is, from an investigation perspective, how do we reduce mean time to investigate? How quickly can we uncover threats by correlating this data that we're getting from various sensors? Also, if we can add threat intelligence into that correlation. So once we're doing that investigation, can we automate consumption of threat intelligence without the need of an API-based integration or so on, right? So reducing mean time to investigate. And finally, once the investigation is done, how quickly can we remediate? Or sometimes remediation is not really automated. Sometimes remediation is not out of box. So can we at least give a recommendation, right? So sometimes remediation might go beyond one step, right? So in that case, can we give a recommendation saying, hey, this is what we have done from an analytics perspective. This is what our understanding of this particular threat is, and these are the key focus area that the security analyst from the customer side can look at, right? So we can share our recommendations, so that sometimes customer might need that information to do further investigation. Sometimes it is automated, and you can quickly take an action and close that investigation, or sometimes you can just give recommendations saying these are the focus area, these are the things that we already triaged for you, so that we can reduce the mean time to response as well.
Right. Great. It's been a great conversation with both of you, Arvind and Prasad. Thank you so much for taking out time for CIO News episode on the Tech Talk series. Once again, I'm sure our CISOs and CIOs would get great insights out of this conversation. Thank you so much for joining us today. And we look forward to having more discussions with you.
Sure. Thank you so much, Khushbu. Thanks, Arvind.
Thank you. Thank you so much.